Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Objective Leader Sports Show. And I'm Joan Mauricio. This afternoon, one special guest from the state of Iowa and the author of the book, Oracles of the Utopian Coffee House.
That's correct.
And his name is no other than Paul Sugg. Welcome to our show.
Joe, proud to be here.
Hey, tell us more about yourself, Paul.
Well, first of all, I'm the son of a Lutheran pastor. They say two types of people move all over the place. Preachers' kids and kids who were in the military. I was born in Louisiana. We moved to Texas, we moved to North Carolina, and we ended up in Iowa. My father was the chief of chaplains at a Veterans Administration psychiatric hospital there, where a lot of war veterans came back with a lot of mental problems. I've been all over the globe. I received my degrees in political science and history, studying...
Not from the University of Texas, though.
University of Iowa.
University of Iowa.
Go Hawkeyes. And I also got my master's degree from Iowa State University, which is
Cyclone.
Yeah, they're the arch rivals. I flip a coin on game day. I got my master's degree in international development studies from Iowa State. And I've been out building schools in West Africa. I've been all over Southeast Asia, including Philippines. I was the first Iowa businessman in Vietnam. Since the war in 1990, I went into Saigon, and they were still calling it Saigon. Nobody was calling it Ho Chi Minh City. I've also been in Kuala Lumpur. I've also been in Bangkok, as well as made sales in Japan. Been in Singapore, Philippines, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Central Asia area. Was out there on 9/11 and all over Africa. 5 years in Africa.
Why are you all over the place? Are you a CIA agent? Or?
No. USAID. You got to be careful with that one, Joe. The U.S. Agency for International Development is the Foreign Aid and Development Wing of the United States federal government. I am a development economist. I work with agriculture and setting up better supply and value chains and better means for this smallholder farmer, the little guy who owns about 2 hectares of land, to make money off of what he grows and be able to feed his family better. And I've been very successful at that. I've also been a manufacturing rep for companies selling rice handling equipment. And
rice handling?
Yes, grain storage and coolant systems.
Silos,
things like that, to be able to dry rice and maintain, crops like rice and other crops. The third world has a 40 to 60% loss in post-harvest because of the lack of that technology. Our technology limits that to less than 3%.
You've been all over the globe, and you were born in Louisiana. You spent more time outside Louisiana.
Yeah, I lived in Louisiana 4 years. I lived in Texas 2 years. I lived in North Carolina 4 years, and then in Iowa, and I've been all over the place. So
very interesting.
I've been around.
Can you tell us a little bit about the book? Some overview of the book.
The book, Oracles of an Ethiopian Coffee House, is more than just about an Ethiopian coffee house. This is basically a book that discusses the issue of how God's love can heal the worst of shattered lives. Child soldiers in Africa, victims of war, veterans or civilians that have had their villages bombed out, and how God's love, what we call agape love in Christianity, true Christianity as I see it, is the love of Christ, the love of God, the love of the Holy Spirit, helping to mend that shattered soul that's been a victim of war. And I have been in Africa. I have seen the torment of child soldiers. I have been out in the rural villages. I was the first Iowa businessman in Vietnam since the war. I've talked to both sides of that war. Plus, there were a number of Vietnam veterans that came back with post-traumatic stress disorder that were at the VA hospital in Knoxville, where I grew up.
All right, very interesting. What makes this book separate from the other book?
That's a very good question. Thank you for asking. This book is not mind candy. Basically, I don't pull any punches. I talk about some very relevant issues. I force the Western reader to break out of what we call an ethnocentric paradigm. I force them to break out of the American mindset and see things from the perspective of people in other countries. And my widespread experience around the world, being in Kenya and Uganda, Ghana, where I built schools when I was 22, to being in Russia, being in Kazakhstan, being in Southeast Asia. All of these experiences come to light, and I force the reader to come out and see things from a different perspective. And in doing so, I force the reader to take a more objective look at themselves. This is not what they call mind candy. This is steak and potatoes for the mind. This is going to make you think. My book is going to challenge you, and it's, I think, a must-read. It's a story that has to come out with the hate that we see flaring up in places like Ferguson, Missouri, where the messages that are being distorted with politicians just completely overlooking a lot of the important issues, what's going on in the Sudan, the problems that we see still in Southeast Asia. There's a lot of healing that needs to be done. Development needs to take place. And I tell these stories in this book in the form of a fiction novel.
Why is this book relevant to the issues of today?
We are fighting a war against terrorism today. We are fighting against radical Islamic jihadist fascism, where they have morphed a religion into an ideology that has been very hostile to freedom. But in order to understand how to fight this war, which is different than anything else we've ever faced, we have to understand third world country conditions. We have to understand that we have to defeat their ideology as well as we have to beat them militarily. Because if we dropped all our nuclear weapons all over Iraq or Afghanistan, we can blow the place up. We can destroy everything. We will have won nothing.
Yeah.
If we beat their ideology, if this child who has a burning belly that hasn't been fed in 3 months, if he gets fed, he turns into the Nobel Prize winner in 20 years. The kid whose belly burns from hunger becomes the angry young man at age 21 with a bomb in his hand that joins ISIS. You've got two clear choices. I choose the Nobel Prize winner. That's why I wrote the book.
Great. But most of our audiences are Asians. How could you interest the Asians to read when you're talking about utopia?
It's more than about an Ethiopian coffee house. I look at Ethiopia because some of the more vivid examples are taking place in Africa, but there are certain commonalities that we see between Asia, Africa, and the rest as these nations have gone through the long struggle of development past colonialism to try to grasp that brass ring of a democracy. If we look at Vietnam and the war, there are a lot of victims on both sides that are still waking up at 4:30 in the morning fighting that war in the form of post-traumatic stress disorder. And if we look at the issues that the Philippines have faced, when I was in Manila, there was a civil war going on in Mindanao Island. These issues and how we are going to come up with a more coherent ideology with a faith-based core focusing on love is how we're going to pragmatically deal with those issues. And I think in Asia, you see a lot of those problems. There's a huge difference between the modernization that you see in Manila and rural Philippines. The same thing with Ho Chi Minh City and the rural areas of Vietnam. They're like an alternate universe. How are you going to deal with that poor farmer? How does that poor farmer get more money for the crops that he and she grow? And how you achieve an increase in rural incomes, causing inventory burn-off in cities, producing overhanded, even economic development. That is going to be the key.
You know, as you talk about the development of the book, of this book, there's a parallel in Southeast Asia. Can you talk about the parallel?
Well, I think some of the parallels are what I just mentioned. If we look at the Vietnam War, for instance, there was no ideological coherency. There was nothing truly understood when I think America approached that war. And the fact of the matter is that when we look at still some of the problems in economic and rural development there today in Asia, I think that we see Asia having to face many of the same problems that Africa did. Asia has gone to more of the new developed market industrializing countries. Africa is about ready to make that leap. But I think there has to be that godly love, that humanitarian concept that goes with it, such that we see the proper leap to be made into the future. I think that this is a book. I talk about Vietnam veterans' experience in Vietnam. I bring those issues home. This is a book about all of us. It's about something that everybody can appreciate, whether Asian or African.
You know, with your global experience, is there any sequel to this book?
Yes, there will be. And I have toyed around with blocking out a number of different scenarios that will be working with Ethiopia, as well as an extension of the book where they return the lost ark of the Old Testament vernacular sense, the mercy seat, back to Jerusalem. There will be some interplay with some of the characters, but I'm not going to go into all that.
You,
You're just
I
going to
want
have
you
to
to
buy
come
the
back.
book.
I want you to come back and talk. Let's talk about the second book.
We'll do that.
Yeah.
I'm already working on my second novel, which is different from this one. It's called Tale of Tobacco Road, and it deals with...
Tobacco Road.
Yes, my family basically
Road-
built Tobacco Road for 350 years.
Well, North Carolina.
Yes, yes.
Oh, I see.
And the fact is, it talks about interracial relationships in the South in the 1920s and 30s, and the transformation from the New South to the Old South through the narrative of baseball.
Oh my God. Hey, where can they purchase this book? I want you to. Do you have an email address or?
Well, I have a website, www.paultsugg.com. Just no period, all in lowercase. www.paultsugg.com, and you go to order the book on the website, and you can buy it from iUniverse, Amazon, or Barnes & Noble. And we're also trying to get Barnes & Noble Corporate, if you're listening, to start stocking this book on all their shelves. And we're thinking that it's going to take off very soon. We're going to see a lot of people getting their hands on it.
Okay. What is next for you? I mean.
Well, Joe, I faced a lot of physical health problems, not the least of which was cancer and an aortic aneurysm dissection. I overcame that, and I'm going to be writing novels. I have some initiatives I wish to work in Africa, but going to be writing books for the most part.
All right. Look like our time is up, and I would like for you to come back, Paul.
I would love to.
During the second book.
Okay.
The sequel.
That's the
Again,
deal.
hey, purchase this book, Oracles of an Ethiopian Coffee House, anywhere at any bookstore, right?
Well, hopefully we don't have them on all the bookstores yet, but you can go online and get it.
Okay, get online. Again, hey, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again next week. And buy this book, very interesting. Global Experience of Mr. Paul Sugg. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you, Joe.